Hi, my name is Anna.
And I'm Jordan, and for our project, we decided to create a video comparing the two cultures of American women versus Indian women.
By doing this, we looked in shame and honor, modesty and dress, gender inequality, and for a bonus, the different types of food.
Our two cultural dimensions that we chose are individualism versus collectivism and person orientation versus task orientation.
This project took a long time to complete, and a lot of effort went into it.
However, we learned a lot while we were making it, and we really hope you enjoy it.
In Indian cultures, it is known for the woman to be beautiful but not too revealing. She should look youthful but not free in dress. It's a balancing act. The dress in India not only has changed throughout time, but is different throughout the country.
Now there are dresses which are kind of a bit different then, and so it kind of matters which part of India you're from. Dresses change a lot, but it's mostly kind of what I've talked about.
BBC Magazine gives us a timeline of what Indian dress has looked like through the years. Starting with 300 BC, men and women wore rectangular pieces of fabric on the lower part of the body and upper part of the body. This is called the Gupta period. Then we go to the 15th century. We see Muslim and Hindu women wearing different outfits, but both were highly influenced by the Mughal Empire, which ruled India and Pakistan in the 16th and 17th century. Women wore similar types of garments even though there was no written code. It was just tradition.
I would say that the dress for women in India is a lot more traditional, longer flowing garbs, partly because of temperature and heat, but also to cover up because of religion.
These outfits gave birth to garments like the salwar kameez or the sari, which is traditionally seen in India today.
The sari, which is basically a national dress, and everybody, even our Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, when she was the Prime Minister of India, that was her dress. She used to wear that for all the official occasions.
Nice.
So.
In the Victorian era, most women did not wear bras underneath their blouses. Today, it is still important for women to cover up.
Strikes me in Indian dress is it's kind of it doesn't show your curves as much as American dresses do. So it's more like a flowing robes that you would be wearing.
And it also different with the different regions of the country. It was not always but about covering your face and body, and in many respects, India's hot climate led the way. For example, in southern India, even in colonial times, women did not cover their upper bodies. However, in today's world of India, the clothing style is changing. Indian women are much freer to do what they want, at least in the cities.
Yes, the city. In the city where we are from, like, we used to dress the way we do it here. So it's like, but of course we don't do the same when we go to say a wedding or a festival. It's like the original ethnic dress.
Does modesty and dress go together? Modesty has different definitions, and over time, it has changed.
In men, but women, it's more. It's very conservative, very very modest. Dresses. I mean, they're brightly colored, but they're still like covered from head to toe. So I feel like that kind of discourages individuality.
A close inspection of women's fashion reveals some true highlights. These moments have had an enduring effect on women all over the world. In the 1800s to 1850s, American style was wrought with a style so romantic that women's fashion has never quite been able to recapture it. These years featured dreamy looks captured in a melange of rich fabrics and elegant silhouettes. Costume-inspired pieces such as thick cloaks, embroidered coats, and elaborate dresses reigned supreme. There was a significant focus on decor, a look that spoke to the period's appreciation for all things Gothic and Elizabethan.
Traditional garb being, depending on what time period you're in, would have been flowing dresses and things like that as well.
With the advent of the sewing machine came more creative innovations. Synthetic dyes made it possible to color clothing in vivid hues.
Increasingly very individual, very creative.
The 1920s fashions began to break barriers. The Roaring Twenties introduced flapper style, to the world, and the looks are adventurous and challenging of authority. Women also began to bare more skin by showing off their arms and wearing nude stockings. In the 1940s, the overall mood during wartime was understated, and clothing of this period reflected the attitude very well. The women's attire featured broad-shouldered jackets and tailored skirts. Jumping to the 1980s, it was known as the decade of excess for good reason. The power suit signaled the woman's escalating role in the workplace, while casual wear continued to be dictated by teenage trends and popular culture similar to today.
Everything is about like expressing yourself, your personality, and the way you want to dress. And we're also getting into this retro stage where you dress in the most retro stage dress possible.
Such progress has paved the way for a mixed bag of styles.
Wider spread between jeans and shorts and skirts and dresses.
Many women take their influence from popular culture and runway trends, while others subscribe to the do-it-my-way style of dressing. Either way, it's clear that fashion has come a very long way since the early days of strict no-fuss style.
Modesty means to us something of dressing and acting every day, and not to wear something that is fitted or nothing too revealing outside of the house.
Most Indian women need to make sure that they are covered up and they can't show their arms or their legs or even their hair in most cases when leaving the house.
It doesn't leave any room for you to work. I mean, you're doing something in the house, or if you're going to work, so you need some room to move. Just thinking from the point of view that if someone works, he or she has to move their arms and feet a certain distance. So yeah, I mean, I wish it were like that. There are some dresses which are like that, which are like that, but not all of them. Let's say, for example, my mother, when she's at home, she'll wear a sari.
But an American woman can get away with a lot more. They're able to show their legs, or wear shorts or a tank top, show their arms. Their hair can be let down, and all kinds of differences.
I really enjoy my freedom and my expression. I like to express myself in, sweatpants and a t-shirt one day, or if I wanted to go out and dress in a crop top and shorts, then I want to be able to do that. And I feel like in America you have that ability to do that, whereas in India, you would have to, every style, every single day, it's the dress.
In today's day and age, Indian culture is transitioning into more westernized, like American dressing styles. So it really just depends on religion, where you're from in India, and the culture that you represent. Shame and honor are typically used anytime group cohesion is essential for success and survival. Shame is a reaction to other people's criticism and acute personal annoyance at our failure to live up to our obligations and the expectations others have of us.
In much of northern and central India, particularly in rural areas, Hindu and Muslim women follow complex rules of veiling the body and avoidance of public appearance, especially before relatives linked by marriage and before estranged men. Purdah practices are linked to patterns of authority and harmony within the family. Hindu and Muslim Purdah observances differ in certain key ways. But female modesty and decorum, as well as concepts of family honor and prestige, are essential to the various forms of Purdah. Purdah restrictions are generally stronger for women of conservative, high-status families. Restriction and restraint for women in virtually every aspect of life are essential to Purdah, limiting women's access to power and to the control of vital resources in a male-dominated society. Usually, a bride lives with her husband in his parental home, where she should accept authority of his senior relatives, perform household duties, and produce children, especially sons, to enhance his family line. Ideally, she honors her husband, proudly wears the cosmetic adornments of a married woman, and cheerfully fulfills her new role. If she is fortunate, her husband will treat her with consideration, treasure her contributions to his household, and allow her continuing contact with her natal relatives. However, for many young wives, this is a difficult transition, and sometimes a young wife may be cut off from her natal relatives altogether, or will not be treated with much consideration or treasured with contributions in the household. In Hindi, a common way to refer to rape is izzat lutna, which translates into being robbed of one's izzat, or honor. Far from being the woman's honor that is stolen, it is the men, husbands, fathers, or brothers, who often see themselves as the real victims. Recently, a village head presiding over a kangaroo court ordered the rape of a 14-year-old girl in the North Indian state of Jharkhand to punish her brother, who had sexually assaulted a female villager. In order to satisfy the husband of the initial victim, the village chief decided that he would carry out the retaliatory rape. Restitution for his wife did not seem to concern anyone. Behind it, the logic of honor was at play. When women are seen as a source of honor, they risk being doubly victimized, once by their families and communities who zealously restrict their freedoms so that they are beyond reproof, and a second time if they become targets of seeking revenge. In January of 2014, such a council in West Bengal sentenced a 22-year-old woman to be gang raped for having a relationship with a man outside of her community. So-called punishment was carried out by 13 of her neighbors, of whom she had known her whole life. Notions of revenge and honor have always been intertwined. This can cause women to end up as collateral, even when they themselves have committed no wrong. This was the case last year when unelected heads of a village council in the state of Uttar Pradesh ruled that a 24-year-old woman should be gang raped to punish her brother, who had eloped with someone's wife. In addition to the green light for the rape, the village council also ordered the woman to marry one of her attackers. One member of a Kapanyat, or kangaroo council, in Haryana, who was defending the decision to ban cell phones for women, said last year, "This might seem drastic, but we believe that this is the only way to stop honor killings in this region." In other words, his solution to end the killings is to protect a woman's honor better. No dishonor, no murder. Women will be safer when honor is no longer tied to their sexual purity. No one is served by such policy of honor, least of all women. In many cases, rape is even used as a punishment on women, and sometimes it is used as a family member's punishment for their wife, daughter, or sister to be raped by one to many men. Men in Indian culture are way more sacred and honored, whereas women have so many restrictions that it is very easy for them to be considered dishonorable.
One maintains self-respect not by choosing what is good rather than what is evil, but by choosing what is expected of oneself. For example, in junior high, you are shamed if you are not the cool one in the group. In the military, since no amount of financial compensation would propel a person to sacrifice their own life for others, acts of bravery are typically rewarded by a public accolade. Hence, they get the highest honor in America. In churches, more often than not, Christians struggle with the false shame of not being good enough and work to hide that side from other Christians. In churches, you are shamed if you don't follow the word of God, and it is an honor to be the priest or the pastor within the church.
For gender inequality in India, the birth of a son is celebrated. Sons are showered with love, respect, better food, and proper health care. Boys are encouraged to be tough and outgoing, while girls are encouraged to be homebound and very shy. All these differences are gender differences, and they are created by society. Gender inequality is therefore a form of inequality which is distinct from other forms of economic and social inequalities. It dwells not only outside the household, but also centrally within it.
Want it to be.
Okay.
And so say for example, if you get to places in India, which are kind of the more poorer sections, the more villages, the more rural part of India, and that's where folks don't have enough education, you still would see this. There is kind of the unwritten law or something like that, that if you have a child, you prefer a son over a daughter.
Right.
And even practices where they even go that far as they would just get rid of the baby after the baby is born. So yeah, I mean, it's against the law, and everybody knows about it. It's kind of, it comes up in newspapers, on the news and so on. But yeah, I mean, if you think about it in the sense, if you just ask someone, is there inequality in India? I would say yes, it is. Okay. You don't see that much in the cities though, but if you go to the cities, you see that a lot. Yeah.
It hampers the overall well-being because blocking women from participation in social, political, and economic activities can adversely affect the whole society. Many developing countries, including India, have displayed gender inequality in education, employment, and health. It is common to find girls and women suffering from high mortality rates. There are vast differences in education levels of two sexes.
Media coverage, lots of education. See, it depends on the geographical.
Right.
Depending on the geography of a place, it varies. Basically, we are from the city, and we honestly don't have any gender inequality there.
Okay.
Like my husband has a PhD in physics, I have a PhD in physics.
Right.
So basically, there is no gender inequality there. And the way we were brought up, and most of the people who are really educated, who have who really have knowledge of the things that's going on, there's basically no gender inequality.
Okay.
But there are parts of India which is like really very sad. I mean, which is like Rajasthan is one of those places where, I mean, because of the lack of education probably, there is still this gender inequality. I mean, they still consider the male to be the superior as compared to their female counterparts. So
Okay.
that's the thing.
The Institute for Women's Policy Research, in partnership with a multitude of organizations, including the Ford Foundation, the Roosevelt Institute Campus Network, and the Center for American Progress, released in 2015 an edition of its project on the status of women in the states.
Well, I feel like we've been fighting for a really long time since America was established. I think that we have come a long way, but I think one of the main things that America is doing, I feel like they could do a little bit better, but it's about getting knowledge out to everybody that, hey, this is still going on. I mean, you could go on Google and research, you type in gender inequality for women, and then you could get articles from Time magazine and newspaper articles and like research that people have done from different universities, trying to get the knowledge and the information out there that this gender inequality is still happening.
Although we have indeed experienced progress toward gender inequality, it is likely that we won't see equal pay for American women within our lifetimes. In general, women's economic security is directly linked to their family income, which includes earning from jobs. What is a glass ceiling? The impenetrable barriers between women in the executive suite were subsequently reaffirmed in the fact-finding report issued by the Glass Ceiling Commission in 1995. At that time, the Commission noted that only 3 to 5% of senior management positions in Fortune 500 companies were filled by women. The Commission also found that where women held senior positions, their compensation was lower than that of their male counterparts.
It's a cement ceiling. It's not a glass ceiling. It's really hard for women to get through. We're still stuck in a perception of what seems to be proper male characteristics are seen as improper for women to display the same. So until we can correct that, we're going to see that ceiling there.
Furthermore, the Commission's findings showed that for women who were in senior positions, the types of positions that were held were in areas such as human resources or research, which are not part of the usual pipeline or career pathway to executive positions. The Commission reported several barriers to the success of women and minorities in reaching the top of management.
That being said, we have come a long way, and women are in the workforce a lot more than they ever have been. Women are on college campuses and getting degrees so they could get those higher paying jobs. But the glass ceiling is definitely still there.
Now we are moving on to cultural dimensions. Our cultural dimensions are individualism and collectivism. Individualism is the idea that the individual is sovereign, an end in himself, and the fundamental unit of moral concern.
For more collectivistic societies like India's, the self is defined relative to others, is concerned with belongingness, dependency, empathy, and reciprocity, and is focused on small, selective in-groups at the expense of out-groups. Relationships with others are emphasized, while personal autonomy, space, and privacy are considered secondary.
They say, in contrast, members of individualistic cultures tend to strive for more independence and have self-concepts defined in terms of their own
style of dress. It's individuality. Americans value individuality. They value their independence, and they value their the right to express that independence. The looking forward to it's not much. Looking forward to the future and being able to change the future. That's something that has been like pounded into us. Like, we have the control of our lives and we have the freedom to do this and we can do what we want to do. And I think that that is a really big part of America's values.
The point has been well discussed by Indian psychiatrists in the past. As early as in 1982, Varma expressed limitations to the applicability of the Western type of psychotherapy in India and cited dependence/interdependence, which is a marker of collectivism, in Indian patients with other family members as foremost of the 7 difficulties in carrying out dynamic and individual-oriented psychotherapy. Surya and Jayaram have also pointed out that the Indian patients are more dependent than their Western counterparts. Neki, while discussing the concepts of confidentiality and privacy in the Indian context, structurally, the Indian joint family includes 3 to 4 living generations, including grandparents, parents, uncles, aunts, nieces, and nephews, all living together in the same household, utilizing a common kitchen and often spending from a common purse, contributed by all.
Family is everything to us. I mean, our family ties are very, very strong. So it's like we can do everything. I mean, whatever we do is for our family, and we can do everything for our family. So that's the most important thing.
Good.
So family tie is very strong. Yeah.
Now on to our second cultural dimension, which is task versus person orientation. For India, they are mainly person-oriented. So person-oriented cultures center around people, human relationships, and the family. For the Hindu family, extended family and kinship ties are of utmost importance. In India, families adhere to a patriarchal ideology, follow the patrilineal rule of descent, are patrilocal, have familiarity, value orientations, and endorse traditional gender role preferences. The Indian family is considered strong, stable, close, resilient, and enduring. It is a group composed of a number of family units living in separate rooms of the same house. These members eat the food cooked at one hearth, share common income, common property, are related to one another through kinship ties, and worship the same idols. The family supports the old, takes care of widows, never married adults, and the disabled, assists during periods of unemployment, and provides security and a sense of support and togetherness. The joint family has always been the preferred family type in the Indian culture, and most Indians at some point in their lives have participated in joint family living.
Task-oriented cultures are people who are oriented to tasks, schedules, and procedures. They focus on completing jobs and concentrates on tasks that have to be done rather than who is doing them. It emphasizes structures, plans, and schedules. Some other details of task orientation include completing the project at hand, effective goal setting and a clear path to complete objectives, schedules and deadlines, roles and goals, and producing desired results. Leaders communicate where they want to take their companies. They also organize groups for particular tasks and ensure that group members have a clear understanding of what their individual roles are. The task-oriented leadership style is well suited to structured work environments such as law enforcement, manufacturing, assembly lines, in which repeating well-defined processes usually results in consistently high levels of productivity and quality. All those are examples of how America is a task-oriented culture.
Butter chicken, or makhani, is an Indian dish of chicken in a mildly spiced curry sauce. It is served in India and abroad. The dish has its roots in Punjabi cuisine and was developed by the Moti Mahal restaurant in Delhi, India, in the 1950s. Today, it is among India's best-known foods the world over. Restaurants around the globe have their version of it, but not all are as tasteful or authentic.
Lionel Sternberger is reputed to have introduced the cheeseburger in 1926 at the age of 16 when he was working as a fry cook at his father's Pasadena, California sandwich shop. Burgers are often known by the name Liberty Sandwich from World War I. Americans wanted to avoid any German name as much as possible. Burgers weren't as popular until the introduction at a St. Louis World's Fair held in 1904, which helped its popularity. An interesting fact is adding cheese to hamburgers became popular in the late 1920s and mid-1930s, and there are several competing claims as who created the first cheeseburger. We hope you can take something away from this video as much as Jordan and I did for making it.
The gender inequality and glass ceiling is a real thing in both cultures, and we hope that one day it becomes resolved and more equal with time.
By talking about honor killings, I hope you're more aware of what is happening around the world rather than just our culture.
Also, perhaps you learned how to make a better burger. Also, if you have any questions for us after this video finishes, please feel free to ask us.
Thank you.
Thank you.